For over 30 years, one series has defined strategy gaming, giving players the power to shape history, build empires, and rewrite the fate of humanity, one turn at a time. This is the story of Civilization, a franchise that has captivated millions from its humble beginnings in 1991 to the latest entry in the series. A journey of innovation, epic rivalries, and of course, Gandhi's nuclear wrath. Civilization wasn't just another strategy title, it was a grand experiment. Could a player truly build a civilization that would stand the test of time? The answer was yes, if they could survive long enough. With a simple tile-based world, the game allowed players to start from a single settler and expand into a vast empire. They would guide their people through history, researching technology, founding cities, and waging war. But this wasn't just about brute force. Players had to balance diplomacy, economy, and military might, all while fending off aggressive rivals, both AI and human. It introduced core mechanics that would become staples of the series: the tech tree, government types that shaped how empires functioned, and the ultimate goal of either conquering the world or launching humanity into space. And then, of course, there was that infamous AI bug Gandhi, whose aggression rating, when pushed too low, wrapped around into nuclear madness, cementing his place in gaming legend. Upon release, Civilization was an instant hit, selling over 1 million copies, an astonishing feat for a PC game at the time. It cost $50 at launch, which in today's dollars is about $120. Critics praised its depth, even as they struggled with the sometimes unpredictable AI. The series had begun, and there was no turning back. Five years later, Civilization 2 took everything great about the original and made it bigger, deeper, and most importantly, prettier. Gone was a simple top-down map, replaced with an isometric perspective that felt like stepping into a living, breathing world. But the changes weren't just cosmetic. The AI was smarter, diplomacy was more nuanced, and war was more strategic. Perhaps the most memorable addition was the High Council, a group of animated advisors who bickered over how you should run your empire. The military advisor, a stereotypical gruff general, always wanted war. Science advisor, bookish and nerdy, pushed for technological advancement. It was a charming, humorous touch that gave the game personality all its own. Civ 2 launched at $45, or about $95 in today's money, and went on to sell over 3 million copies. Fans and critics hailed it as one of the greatest strategy games of all time. Civilization series was no longer just a niche title, it was a powerhouse. By the time Civilization 3 arrived in 2001, Firaxis Games, Sid Meier's new studio, had taken full control of the franchise, and they had big plans. Biggest innovation? Culture. Now cities weren't just military strongholds, they had influence. Borders expanded not through conquest, but through art, religion, and intellectual power. If your civilization's culture was strong enough, enemy cities might even defect and join you voluntarily. And then there were strategic resources, a game changer. You might have a powerful army, but if you didn't control a source of iron, you weren't getting any swordsmen. No oil? Good luck building tanks. Suddenly trade and resource management became just as important as military might. Civ 3 launched at $50, $92 in today's money, and sold over 2 million copies. While it was praised for its depth, it wasn't without flaws. Fans bemoaned the lack of multiplayer at launch, and the AI could still be erratic. But it was undeniably the most complex and rewarding Civilization game yet. Then came Civilization 4, a revolution in strategy gaming. For the first time, the world wasn't just a series of flat tiles, it was fully 3D, with mountains casting shadows and rivers carving through the landscape. It felt alive. And then, when you unlocked a new technology, you were greeted by the soothing, authoritative voice of Leonard Nimoy himself.
Blessed shall be the fruit of thy cattle, the increase of thy kind, and the flocks of thy sheep.
His entry introduced religion, adding an entirely new dimension to diplomacy and empire management. Founding religion like Buddhism or Christianity wasn't just a spiritual choice, it was a political tool, shaping alliances and rivalries across the world. Great people also took center stage, allowing players to recruit legendary figures like Isaac Newton or Sun Tzu, who could bolster research, culture, or military power. With a launch price of $50, $83 in today's money, Civ 4 sold over 3 million copies and is still regarded as one of the greatest strategy games ever made. Of course, it gave us the Grammy-winning theme Baba Yatu, the first video game song to win such an honor.
Welcome back, my son. I've missed you. Have the men begun setting up the encampment?
Yes, Father.
Good. This is lush, fertile land. I think we can make a home here.
I agree. We will do well in this place.
Come, sit with me and listen. I've had a dream of our people's future. It was glorious. Glorious. I saw our people spreading throughout the land and across the oceans, expanding our kingdom and discovering new people and great riches in faraway lands. We built wondrous monuments honoring the gods, which reached up to brush the very fabric of the heavens. And then I saw a vast city with great buildings of stone, each more magnificent than the last. The streets were filled with our people, in numbers beyond counting. There was suffering as well, great and terrible, brought about by the torments of war. But we were strong, and we brought victory to our people. There my dream ended, and my story as well. For it has been revealed to me that it is your future I dreamed of, not mine. The fate of our people is now in your hands. I envy you, my boy. Your decisions will shape history itself. Go now, my son, with my blessing, and decide your future.
With Civilization 5, Firaxis took a bold step, one that would fundamentally reshape how the series played and looked. Gone were the square tiles that defined the franchise for nearly 2 decades. In their place, hexagons. It might sound like a minor change, but this single innovation completely transformed combat and exploration. And speaking of combat, stacking dozens of units onto a single tile? Gone. Now armies had to spread out across the battlefield, making unit positioning and strategy more important than ever. Wars were no longer just about who had the biggest army, but who could maneuver them best. Another game changer was the introduction of city-states. Independent minor civilizations that could be allies, trade partners, or obstacles in your quest for dominance. These tiny factions added a new diplomatic layer, giving players fresh ways to gain influence without outright conquest. But Civ 5 launched in a somewhat stripped-down state. Religion and espionage, key features from past games, were missing. It wasn't until Gods and Kings in 2012 and Brave New World in 2013 that the game truly reached its potential. Gods and Kings brought back religion, espionage, and deeper combat mechanics, while Brave New World overhauled diplomacy and trade, introducing the World Congress, a precursor to the United Nations. Despite its rocky start, Civilization V went on to sell over 8 million copies, making it one of the best-selling strategy games of all time. The launch price was $50, $65 in today's money, and though critics praised the fresh ideas, many felt the game lacked depth. By the end of its life cycle, it had become one of the most beloved entries in the series.
You're plotting a new course again, aren't you?
The currents before us are ever changing. We must adapt and press forward if we are to see our journey's end.
And how will we know when we get there?
It is the nature of humankind to push itself toward the horizon. We test our limits. We face our fears. We rise to the challenge and become something greater than ourselves. A civilization.
How do you take a game as polished as Civilization V and make it even better? For Civilization VI, Firaxis had an answer: unstack the cities. For the first time in the series, cities physically expanded onto the map, with districts specializing in science, culture, military, and more. No longer could players just cram wonders and improvements into a single tile. Now, terrain mattered more than ever. Diplomacy also saw major revisions. In the past, AI opponents had been unpredictable and often illogical. Now, each leader had hidden agendas, meaning their behavior could shift depending on the state of the game. And of course, Firaxis continued the tradition of star-studded narrators, this time with Sean Bean lending his iconic voice to the tech tree. At launch, Civ 6 received glowing reviews but also criticized for an AI that was often too erratic. However, just like Civ 5, its two major expansions, Rise and Fall in 2018 and Gathering Storm a year later, took the game to another level. Rise and Fall introduced Golden Ages and Dark Ages, making history feel more dynamic as civilizations experienced periods of prosperity or decline. It also added governors, unique figures that could enhance cities in different ways. Gathering Storm brought natural disasters, climate change, and a global warming system that forced players to think beyond their own empire. At launch, Civilization 6 was priced at $60, $75 today in today's money, and has since sold over 11 million copies, making it the most successful entry in the series to date. Critics praise its innovations, but the AI remained a sticking point for many players.
The past is more than what we leave behind. We celebrate our triumphs and bury our regrets. Every age has its secrets. In each layer of history, we can rediscover hope. A way to chart our future. Countless stories are carved into the Earth's strata. The lessons of one age augur the next. We must learn from our past. The future is waiting.
After nearly a decade of waiting, Civilization 7 has finally arrived, and with it, one of the biggest shake-ups in the series since Civ 4. While many of the details were kept under wraps pre-launch, Firaxis promised an even more dynamic living world, where civilizations evolve into responsive to environmental and geopolitical factors. Early reviews have been promising. PC Gamer praised its deeper diplomacy system, finally making AI leaders feel truly human. GameSpot highlighted the more organic city growth, which allows urban centers to blend into the landscape more naturally. And for the first time, Civilization 7 introduced a truly persistent multiplayer mode, where players can drop in and out of evolving long-term worlds. The game launched at $70, a nice price point reflecting its ambitious scope. Sales figures are still coming in, but one thing is clear: Civilization continues to dominate the strategy gaming world.
The lessons of one age.
For over 3 decades, Civilization has not just survived, it has flourished. has shaped the 4X strategy genre: explore, expand, exploit, and exterminate, inspired countless competitors, and redefined what it means to create a digital empire. From the pixelated landscapes of Civ 1 to the breathtakingly complex worlds of Civ 7, the franchise has always been one thing: giving players the freedom to rewrite history. It has taught generations of gamers about real-world history, diplomacy, and the delicate balance of power. And perhaps more than anything else, Civilization has given us those legendary late-night moments. We tell ourselves, just one more turn, only to see the sun rising hours later. As long as there are leaders to guide, wars to fight, wonders to build, and victories to claim, civilization will always endure, because history, as I say, is written by the victors.